So you have to scale your product development approach. Now what? How will you approach it? What functional disciplines will you prioritize hiring? What new teams do you need to charter and hire for? And how will you decide? What will feel different about the way work is done at your organization, and what things will feel familiar? Above all, what outcomes are you trying to enable with the approach to scaling that you're taking? Welcome to Agile Scaling Foundations with Barry Hawkins. Please be sure to like and subscribe. This video series is based on training that I've delivered both as a product development leader building teams internally and as a consultant helping clients scale their product development organizations as well. In this video, I'll introduce Team of Teams, the approach that I've used for scaling, and cover the key outcomes that it's designed to enable. Team of Teams. In the early days of Agile, we were mostly focused on the team as the atomic unit of agility, at least as far as what we were writing, documenting, and talking about. As we began to scale, or for some of us who never had the option not to scale, we did a collection of things that were just intuitive at the time. And back then, 10 years ago, if you had looked at my approach versus a Jeff Patton or Mike Cohn or Craig Larman or hell, anybody I would talk to at conferences or gatherings and compare notes, they all looked quite similar and philosophically aligned. There was the need to group teams together in ways that reduced communication overhead and dependencies, and there was the idea of a higher level construct that represented the overall collection of work this team was doing as a group of initiatives, and you had regular readouts to facilitate driving alignment and communicating how that group's work was in alignment with the strategies and goals that we had as an organization. And that was it, really, and life was good. And then you get to the early 2010s, and suddenly these frameworks began to emerge, touting themselves as the official way to scale Agile, and they had these cute 4-letter and 5-letter and 3-letter acronyms. And I found myself in organizations doing the things that honestly had worked really well without having a name for almost 10 years at that point. And I'm suddenly being asked, well, which one is this? Is this X or is this Y? And saying no and don't worry about it began to be more and more challenged. And so there I was, needing to get stuff done and scale organizations, but people wanted to know, what branded framework was this? I can remember the day that I finally said it to a group. It wasn't the first time I'd been asked the question of, is this framework X? It was just the day that I finally, I guess, had it with being asked that question. And so what is the approach that we're taking? And I just said, Team of Teams. About that spontaneously. I'd been thinking about the name for a bit, and what was I trying to accomplish? And all I wanted to do was to be able to take a group of related teams and have them work together in ways that reduce communication overhead, decrease dependencies, and made it clear that what these folks are working on is aligned with our objectives and strategies. And if it's not, we can see that so that we can course correct. And there you go. Team of Teams. Now, some of you who are familiar with my myth of commoditized excellence may be saying, Barry, aren't you the guy that says that naming things is awful and the beginning of the end? Aren't you the person who rails against the named establishments and branded frameworks? I am the person who often cites the W. Edwards Deming quote, or at least the quote attributed to W. Edwards Deming, that says, if you give something a name, people will expect you to hand it to them in a box. And yes, that is something I've been trying to avoid my whole software product development career. But when you're trying to accomplish transformation or evolution at a rapid pace, and you find yourself up against a refusal or resistance to take on some new and needed things for growth. You have to balance the need to make progress against the purity of a given position or philosophy. And that's where I found myself with Team of Teams, and that's how it came to be. So as you begin to establish and then evolve and refine your approach to product development scaling, how do you ensure that you stay true to the intent with which you began, to preserve that responsive and nimble way in which you had operated when you were a much smaller organization? For me, it's been years of trial and error and experimentation, and through those years, there have emerged for me 4 key outcomes to effective product development scaling, and we'll cover those in the sections ahead. Optimize for throughput of product outcomes. When it comes to how you charter and staff your teams, as well as how you group them into Team of Teams, you want to optimize for having the most direct path to take product ideas into the hands of your customers. Because at the end of the day, organizations exist to deliver outcomes that increase the growth and adoption of the products we're building. Our groupings should not give way to pressures from the most dominant functional discipline or the whims of the most dynamic or bombastic stakeholder. Reduce communication overhead. Communication overhead is a key impediment to the speed of collaboration and product development at scale. When there's an excessive number of teams across which you have to coordinate execution, or a disparate and unwieldy group of stakeholders that you have to try and align, things are going to take way longer than you expect them to. To that end, an effective approach to scaling should group teams and appoint cross-functional leadership such that streamlining communication becomes possible. This involves trust and an acknowledgement that everyone can't be expected to know everything around what everyone else is doing if we're going to build trust and autonomy so that we can stay nimble and responsive. Connect executive priority to delivery. It's very common as organizations scale to build out the horizontal surface area of your teams to a point that's well beyond your current approach to communicating executive priority and strategy, such that it's not clear what the connection is between what you say the priorities are and what your teams are working on. To that end, your approach to scaling needs to incorporate connective tissue such that executive priority can flow down to teams in a contextualized manner, so that those very concise bullet points are understood in terms of how they apply to what teams are working on. Additionally, the approach and level of effort of the work that's being asked needs to flow back up to leadership so that that approach and the cost can inform strategy and priority on an ongoing basis. And in that way, we have this continuous virtuous cycle of contextualized strategy and priority flowing down, approach and level of effort flowing up, so that we avoid that disconnect between what executives are saying and what people on teams are doing. Trade-offs are made. One of the surest signs that your agile scaling approach is effective is that you will see deliberate trade-offs being made at the organizational level. We should be learning with the delivery of each initiative such that we are able to repeat our successes and avoid the repetition of our failures. Avoid the common mistake as a leader of instituting an agile scaling initiative only to still ask for everything you've thought of to be delivered all at the same time. You should be creating focus such that everyone on your teams knows what they are working on and what they are not working on at this time and why. Thanks for watching. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and click the notification icon so that you'll be first to know when new episodes of Agile Scaling Foundations and other product development videos are uploaded. For the next episode of Agile Scaling Foundations, check out the video up here. For the full Agile Scaling Foundations series, check out the playlist down here. Again, I'm Barry Hawkins. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.